In closing, thank you for participating in the 2022 Partners in Action Annual Conference, and I hope that you gained some valuable information presented here today. Please welcome our speaker from the Grand Traverse Band of Ottawa and Chippewa Indians. I'm sorry about that. Brett Fessell, Restoration Section Leader, River Ecologist. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. There you go.
Well, thank you, Mary, so much, and good morning. It's, as we already covered, it's a beautiful day here in Michigan, and hopefully it is everywhere else. So I will get started. So yeah, good morning. My name's Brett, and I was born in Grand Rapids, Michigan. I grew up with the sounds of traffic and sirens, always kind of longing for the natural world. And according to my father's work, before he walked on over 30 years ago, my family originates from somewhere in Eastern Europe. Like so many of us, non-native biogeets, as so affectionately called sometimes. I say this with a bit of a torn heart, both respect and indignity for my ancestors' way of being. Well, I certainly respect and am grateful for their perseverance and capacity to redefine their place of being and security. I can't help but feel some dishonor and disgrace for how my family came to be here in this place. I am very grateful. In this way, I'd like to offer today an acknowledgement of the privilege that I experience, but more importantly, acknowledge the unquantifiable, invaluable moments of knowledge and way of being that have been carefully and trustfully shared with me in what I'd consider the better half of my life, in the near 3 decades spent working as an ecologist for the Grand Traverse Band of Ottawa and Chippewa Indians. I couldn't possibly repay the gifts I've come to receive and cherish from the friends or family, as it were, I've gained here in my career in this way. However, what I can do to honor these gifts is by simply speaking from the heart as I've been taught, not by my biological family, but more of my professional relations and work, as I've come to appreciate more as my life, my home, my family, where my heart gratefully sits today. In this way, I've been watching, observing, taking note, and applying what I've learned over the years in efforts to build the kind of relationships so well understood by Native people, but often overlooked by a spectrum of people in contemporary communities like Traverse City, Michigan, or the Boardman-Ottaway, on the Boardman-Ottaway, also known as the Ottawa Ottawa. It's been my intent that by maintaining vigil and repeating continuously, reminding and sharing with local communities here, that the message eventually sinks in. A message of connection for the earth, care for the water, care for all beings as family. As most of you know, this way of knowing is often foreign to non-native communities where the natural world is typically considered little more than a resource to be used and bent to human will and desire rather than respected and cared for as a cherished relative upon who we depend. It's my hope that sharing my personal experience and observations in some ways, thinking against the grain of Western science that I was instructed so long ago, that if even for a moment people within the community near and around this river and beyond consider thinking less of themselves and more for their connection to the river, and shift from that thinking good things and promising times will come for the river and for the community, the entire community, people, animals, plants, fungi, water, geology, weather, all of it, all of creation. So this evolving model for restoration carries on from the foundation built through the Boardman-Ottaway River Restoration Project engagement process that helped the community guide the critical decisions leading to the reconnection and restoration of the entire river system, its watershed, and its interdependent communities. In many past presentations on this project, along with a handful of partners on the project team, we would offer the basics of Western science, delivery of outputs and outcomes realized in doing that, just realize any restoration project pursued in these days does that, just lays out these metrics. And here on the Boardman-Ottaway, sought to restore free-flowing, more natural condition, closer to how it was before the ravages of European colonization and settlement. To accomplish this, we set out to simply restore that connectivity by removing 3 dams, Brown Bridge, Boardman, and Sabin dams, and then modify the lowermost dam at Union Street, downtown Traverse City, where we now see the term modify as sort of an extraordinarily simplistic term for what is actually occurring at Union Street Dam. It's in the form of what we call, or is named, Fish Pass, and the intent of that project, which is yet to be constructed, is to provide a world-class selective fish passage facility that'll allow for the passage of native fish species that have been denied access to the watershed for over a century, while at the same time preventing the passage of invasive and other undesired non-native fishes from
Hi, Brett.
invading. Yep.
Are you sharing your slideshow right now?
Yeah.
Okay, you need to share that part. We're just seeing you right now. Sorry about that. I threw you
No
off.
worries. Let's see. Display show tab. I can't find. Now? No. Is it possible that your I can't find the let me see, and show. Give control. You still can't see it?
We can see it now.
Gotcha. Great. So, technical difficulties. So, yeah, we're modifying this lowermost barrier for the passage of native fish and preventing non-native species from entering the system. And with that, I'll spare you the litany of details of this project, beyond details meaning, the metrics that I spoke to a little earlier, and just simply direct you to the Great Lakes Fishery Commission website. Just Google Fish Pass and you'll learn a great deal about that, and you'll hear much more into the future. So, beginning over 15 years ago, we endeavored on this journey of restoring the Boardman-Ottaway river ecosystem in the same logical fashion as any large-scale restoration project, where the first step would be to connect, in this case, a diverse and dynamic advisory team of resource stewardship leaders. that would help find and leverage funding and other resources that align with the local priorities and visions, advocate for policy change at the state level that better recognizes rivers as more than just a thing we use for profit or personal benefit, like build dams to extract or sell river energy, often while creating highly valuable waterfront properties that typically are occupied by affluent communities. We also sought to create regional support for care-based resource sustainability, a conservation ethic based on endearing and even kinship relationships with natural resources. From here, an idea began to emerge, and that idea was that this project would not just be another river restoration project involving dam removal, rather it'd be a restoration of community through connection. Over the years, a vision began to crystallize through an engagement process that helped the community, much like a family, guide and make critical decisions around the who's, how's, and why's of the project. And the people actually started to see and feel how reconnecting the river could actually reconnect people, places, and inspire ideas and innovation, and recognize the power of connectedness and relationships in restoring a community in conjunction with the river. Much like species or systems evolve to adapt and solve a constant supply of survival problems in order to seek balance in its existence, an eco-cyclic model for collaboration helps build an intuitive and familiar understanding into complex systems. Considering collaboration in this way can allow the time and space for an iterative learning process of rethinking how people with different perspectives begin to recognize how sharing a common standard of care towards rivers, or water in general, for that matter, can help ensure it remains healthy and available for all things in all generations. So we started by acknowledging the common ground that we all share here and everywhere, and that's water and trust. By virtue of how water services all life and underpinning trust and connectedness is established and affords disparate stakeholders, whether it be community practitioners, governments, funders, etc., a common standard or trust in what we know to be true, that water is life and that it connects us all. And I think we can all trust in that idea. Next, we sought to converge disparate communities. The iterative nature of this process allows for an evolution of ideas and perspectives among stakeholders and partners, which is key to recognizing, fostering, and replicating the emergences of success. And so by integrating traditional values and tenets with contemporary collaborative practices and scientific standards, there emerge countless opportunities for effective and balanced communication among stakeholders with different worldviews and perspectives. And so last, we then looked at innovative ways nature creates solutions to ever-present challenges to survival through adaptation and evolution towards balance. Just as natural systems and their inhabitants evolve to adapt and survive in the face of adversity and change, so we might continue to learn from these lessons in nature in natural stable systems by following similarly our own capacity to evolve our thinking, just as our beings, systems, and communities instinctively know not to put all their eggs in one basket in order to spread the risk of failure. Just like fishery populations are plastic in their life histories and strategies, like spawning in lakes and rivers at the same time. Again, they figured it out, how to distribute that risk. So in this light, one fundamental fact emerges in that every being, every process, everything has a life cycle. It's simply a matter of scale. And key to this understanding is knowing that built within those life cycles at varying scales are opportunities to learn, adapt, and sometimes evolve such species or systems like projects may excuse me, prosper or perish depending on the interconnectedness of associated communities. From the beginning, one of the underpinnings of this process, from the perspective of Grand Traverse Band, has been to help the human community better understand and integrate traditional values and tenets within the context of contemporary scientific practices and standards that would inform decisions and actions over the years. The intent of this cultural integration was and still is to level and balance communication among stakeholders. Communication that would serve to form a unique and trusting partnership grounded in the idea of reviving a humanly instinctive perspective of connectedness and help communities develop a thoughtful and intimate ecological standard of care. One way of envisioning this instinctive perspective is borrowed from nature and illustrated in this model, this eco-cycle model. Most notably, it opposes the linear ways of predictive thinking so familiar to Western perspectives, like budget burn rates or timelines on presentations. The list is endless, but it's how we're trained to think linearly. Although familiar, to truly build this cyclic model of knowing and understanding requires a fundamental shift in thinking that remembers and acknowledges that a sustainable system never ends. Rather, it transcends in balance, where each of the cycle quadrants, basically the 4 quadrants of this cycle, represent the stages in the life cycle of everything, even restoration projects. And the cross linkages within the cycle represent how the systems evolve to improve themselves through remembering and learning. In essence, nearly everything we know goes through these stages of birth, maturity, creative destruction, and renewal. And it goes on everywhere. Every iteration improves upon the last in pursuit of self-sustainability. So I ask you, remember this point. Move forward. Carrying this model forward from how we know systems evolve with an intent to improve or adapt to changing conditions, and realize that other connections exist where Indigenous concepts and common standards of care can be applied in a way of helping non-native ways of thinking and knowing to better understand and relate to this iterative, instinctive way of thinking. This is where this higher standard of care for the natural world can emerge, a standard of care or kinship that develops when framed within the 7 sacred teachings of love, truth, honesty, wisdom, courage, respect, and humility. A standard of care that might help non-native publics think in different ways about the common standards and practices applied in the restoration of rivers and communities. And it's in these tenets that they're familiar in concept to most, if not all, people, that the importance of connection can be better understood by all communities and serve to build upon our relationship with and deep care for the natural world and the spectrum of connections that we share with it and with each other. And this I've come to kind of illustrate those connections for restoration of communities, where in the birth quadrant, we put down in the lower left, watershed planning, typical, metric used in restoration. And in this regard, we should always endeavor to consider planning and development efforts that are grounded in genuine love for the conservation of environmental integrity, connectedness, and sustainability for all beings living within or passing through that watershed. And then in the maturity quadrant, we can endeavor to develop regional and statewide policy that is grounded by truth, inasmuch that it is supported by defendable, current, and validated data collected using sound scientific methods, which are relevant, repeatable, and mutually acceptable. We should never stop learning. Conservation arises from the truth, no matter how inconvenient it may be. In the creative destruction quadrant, this ensures that the process deliberately seeks out and involves local units of government through honest and authentic opportunities to engage and provide a sense of ownership in the success of the project. And this can help minimize the confusion and chaos that life cycles often experience, and so do projects. In the renewal quadrant, leadership development is placed. A community of leaders would commit to share the wisdom gained through experience by recognizing and celebrating the successes while learning and growing from failures and challenges. And then in the centers of each lobe of the cycle model, we want to avoid circling this failure trap, and that's where those sit. And we do that by citizen engagement, having the courage to engage any and all stakeholders in as many aspects of the project, from concept development, planning to implementation and accountability. Recognize that all views should enjoy equal consideration. And the key word here is engagement rather than consultation. Pardon me. Then next is the cycle linkages, the cross linkages. These linkages center in placemaking. So it's important to hold humility, to accept that there's a variety of community member perspectives and values that recognize everybody or everyone identifies with a different sense of place and quality of life. It's all a matter of perspective. And then finally, communication and humility go hand in hand and flow both ways. So keeping the conversations framed in humility will foster authentic relationships that are best equipped to create a sense of place built naturally and organically from the community. So remember that natural systems are designed through evolution to become self-maintaining, self-operating, and sustainable. So be humble to know that we've had nothing to do with the original creation of these ecosystems on this planet, and they operate just fine without our intervention if we don't disrupt them in the first place. But our role now is to bring some of those systems back. So last and most importantly, know that the success of any project guiding process is grounded in connection and trust. And without connection, trust can't be established. And without trust, the resistance to change can pervade the system and disintegrate the processes that lead to the sustainability. So if these teachings or tenets, guiding principles, however you see them, are thoughtfully held in front of every step of the process, I think we all know, planning, decisions, actions, etc., then the project will be walking in a good way. So in closing, it's been my humble experience that the more these words are said out loud in communities, non-tribal communities, in project updates, in sales pitches, celebrations, the more likely they are to be remembered and applied. And if the nature of human beings is to be competitively compelled to improve, I offer the challenge to any and all communities to simply consider learning to think even the tiniest bit differently. And in doing so, it's my sincere belief that such willingness will help lead to a transformation of truly sustainable communities, all connected with a single something: water. So that's all I have to say, at least about this, and I'm happy to open this for questions, but also just as a conversation, as a way to have a conversation among professionals from different perspectives, and see how to improve this message, see how to use it in a way that's it's positive and useful for projects anywhere, particularly involving, you know, tribal leadership. But so thank you.
Hey, this is Mary again. So I'm going to be stop recording, and I'm opening up the